Good evening and welcome to our continuing coverage of Operation Sindoor. Viewers, amidst the India-Pakistan tensions, an Indian government official has told Times Now that it has a history of acknowledging its losses and those who've laid down their life in service of the nation. The statement further says that Operation Sindoor is ongoing and we will provide details at an appropriate time. While the government of India has strongly maintains that we have always acknowledged our losses, including those who've laid down their life in the service of the nation. It's Pakistan which has a history of disowning its soldiers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. And these are visuals, just to refresh your memory, from 1999, when Pakistan even refused to claim their dead soldiers during the Kargil war. It was our braves who then gave them a decent burial and dignity in death. Let's quickly take this across to my colleague Rishabh, who's joining us. Rishabh is going to join us in just a few moments. I'll quickly go across to Rishabh, who's actually got us that particular story. And very importantly, at this point of time, we will in fact go right across to Rishabh. Very important that the government is clarifying its position as far as the various claims that have been made. Remember, a number of unsubstantiated claims that have been made, that have been put out on traditional media as well as social media, particularly, of course, a lot of these coming in from Pakistan. The government, of course, coming to clarify its position as far as whatever losses it has. India has a history of acknowledging these, as well as, of course, of its own soldiers, its own officers, anyone who's laid down their life in the service of the nation. And given that Operation Sindoor is ongoing, all details will be provided at an appropriate time. That's the information coming in at this point of time. Very significant that we have this detail coming in as far as Operation Sindoor is concerned. Rishabh, very significant. You spoke to government officials who've told you that all of this speculation, all of the detailing that is being done, much of it, of course, fakery on Pakistan's part, but the government is not going to shy away from its own responsibility, whether it is towards their soldiers or it is towards their own military and defense assets.
Well, Madhav, there were a lot of chatter that we were seeing from Pakistan, from various international media outlets as well, that we are not owing up to certain losses, the military losses during Operation Sindoor. And a very senior government of India official has told this 2 times now, that India has a history of acknowledging its losses, those who have laid down their life in the service to nation. And Operation Sindoor, he says, is in progress, it is ongoing, and hence the government will provide details of any such losses that are being reported when there is appropriate time. So very categorically, India says that we are not what Pakistan did back in Kargil days, where they denied taking the corpus of mortal remains of their own soldiers. India says that right now the operation is on. There cannot be discussions around losses or targets. We will own up if there are any such losses once the appropriate time comes in. Madhav.
Rishabh, for joining us. As far as that update is concerned, we'll keep coming back to you. Of course, a number of issues over which the government has clarified its position in its recent briefing, and now one more issue that you're bringing to us, in fact, where the government is coming clear on. And in fact, let me quickly take this across to Nitin Gokhale, defense analyst. He's a national security analyst, joining us. Nitin Gokhale, you would have heard the press conference of the government a short while earlier. Now we have a senior official telling us here at Times Now that the government of India has a history of acknowledging its losses, of also those who've laid down their life in the service of the nation. And given that the operation is ongoing, it will perhaps come out at the appropriate time. What do you make, sir, of this particular statement?
Well, certainly, I think because it's an ongoing operation and it might have an impact on the operation that is going on right now, the government has chosen not to disclose the details of any aircraft losses, if any, as you've also reported. And I think this is a fair point, although, in such situation, it is better to acknowledge quickly, would be my take, but government has its own reasons, I'm sure. And we'll have to stay with that and sort of give that right to the government not to disclose or not to give the information at this moment. But let me also point out to one fact. For years one has been seeing occasional aircraft crashes in India. And the first information or first visuals and photographs always come from local villagers, local stringers who are reporters, part-time reporters, because somewhere or the other, the debris of an aircraft that has fallen, which is sort of on the ground, either burning or just fallen in a field somewhere or in a residential area, immediately comes. India is a thickly populated country. It is high density population everywhere. And if at all Indian aircraft have fallen, where is the evidence? I mean, you can't really ring fence everything
All right.
that would have done. So I think that one must keep in mind.
But Nitin Gokhale, I'd like to take you across to one of the points that was made at the press briefing a short while earlier. I don't know if you followed it, but one of the very startling aspects of this is how Pakistan is using its civil aviation aircraft as a shield for its own population, its own defense forces. Now, this is a very, very startling claim.
Well, that is what cowards do, and Pakistan is hiding behind its civilian assets or civilian population by not stopping civilian air traffic in the area where India would be targeting some of the military bases or terrorist hideouts. And that is because then they want to escalate it to a situation where they can blame India for collateral damage to civilian assets and civilian citizens or even their civilian aircraft. And this is because India is making it clear right from day one, from the first hour of the Operation Sindoor, that the first targeting or the 9 places that were targeted were purely chosen because there were terrorist hideouts, terrorist camps, terrorist headquarters. And India has taken great care not to target any military installation or military target in Pakistan, or a civilian or a citizen-centric place, or even economic targets like factories or dams or even the markets anywhere. That is what India has done deliberately, and Pakistan wants India to sort of get away from that, or at least not have the advantage of the high moral ground that India has, because it has only precisely targeted terrorist assets and infrastructure, which it wants India to not have that advantage, and therefore they're doing this, as I would think is the case.
Right. And also, Nitin Gokhale, we are looking at a situation where it is Pakistan that is repeatedly escalating the situation over the past 36 hours. If you look at it, as you rightly said, India has had a precision strike on terror camps that we know have, where there have been plots, where there have been people such as Kasab, Headley and Masood Azhar who have either been trained or have trained others to carry out acts of terror against India. In response, Pakistan targets military installations, Pakistan targets civilian installations. We saw what happened last night or the night before when it comes to various aspects of our border areas. How are you looking at the situation developing from here on? India has given a befitting response, but a cowardly attempt by sending these missiles and drones from across the LOC and across the border.
Well, like I said, onus now lies, or I think even the government has been saying that the onus of de-escalation or not taking this any further lies with Pakistan. If it wants to go off-ramp here, it is Pakistan's choice. If it wants to escalate and then invite Indian response, which will be appropriate and in the same domain, then it is Pakistan's choice. So they have to take a decision what Pakistan wants to do, because India has made it clear that it will not escalate the situation. It was a non-escalatory precision strikes that were carried out on 7th of May. And India is awaiting Pakistan's reaction to that. But Pakistan so far has shown no inclination of stopping any of the counter moves or counter strikes that they tried on 8th night, which is yesterday, Thursday night. And if they do it again, India will give a befitting response. Appropriate response is what the government stand has been, Indian government stand has been. So therefore, the onus and the responsibility lies on Pakistan where it wants to end it, if it wants to end this particular episode of the conflict between India and Pakistan.
Interesting that you mentioned the word conflict, but given the fact that ceasefire appears to be a thing of the past, would you say that we are at war? How would you define the situation we find ourselves in?
No, I don't think it's a war, Madhav, really. It's a conflict that has been imposed on India. The original escalation, like Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri mentioned on Thursday, came from Pakistan with the killing of innocent tourists and selective killing of tourists in Pahalgam on 22nd April. And India has only responded to that. So it's not yet war, I would think, but yes, there is the possibility of this spiraling out of control if Pakistan does not now stop where it has so far, and it should read the writing on the wall. I think most of the world opinion is with India. And Pakistan even doesn't have the economic wherewithal to sustain
Absolutely.
any long war. So I don't think it's a war at the moment, but it might just spiral if Pakistan decides to continue like this.